What happens when two bass road warriors spend quality time talking music and life with one of their peers? Find out every Monday at 8 on Notes from an Artist. Bassist, educator, author David C. Gross and bassist and head honcho of KnowYourBassPlayer.com, Tom Semioli, trade dates with the legends of rock, jazz, funk, blues, folk, country, and more. Notes from an Artist. Revealing conversations with the legends who've created the soundtrack of our lives. Every Monday at 8 on CygnusRadio.com. And check out previous episodes on our podcast. NotesFromAnArtist.buzzsprout.com.
Hi, this is David Gross, and along with co-host Tom Semioli, I want to welcome you to another Notes from an Artist radio show. Tonight, we are welcoming to our show Dave Swift. Dave has been for the past 30 years holding down the bottom for Later with Jools Holland, which is a TV show that's broadcast on the BBC. He has played with countless musicians and singers like Ray Davies, Tom Jones, George Benson, Chaka Khan, and on and on and on. Also, Dave was our extra credit assist live on Zoom with Tom and I when we filmed our first Tips from the Top segment with Mr. Ron Carter. A great guy. Let's begin our conversation with Dave Swift. Hi, Tom. Hi, Dave.
David, did you know that Dave Swift is the most recognizable bass player in all of the UK?
I thought it was Sid Vicious. I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of similarities. I'm the most highly recognized bass player in my own house.
Well, there you go. And there's Lucy in the background. How are Lucy and Oscar doing?
How are you?
Hey, let's talk about your review. Let's talk about you're doing the classic jazz singers, right?
Yeah. Was it the legendary Ladies of Jazz?
Yeah.
The legendary Ladies of Jazz. Yeah, great.
I'm playing ukulele as well.
You're playing ukulele.
Yeah, I was telling Dave about Jake and the version of Bohemian Rhapsody on the ukulele. Did you see that?
Yeah, Lucy was way ahead of me on that. I'd not heard of him until you mentioned, but she went, "Oh yeah, I know him. He's great. He's cool." She's very good at doing her research, way better than I am.
Well, we're going to talk about that because we're going to talk about the history, your knowledge, how bass players reference history, and Lucy doing, I guess it's what, Billie Holiday, Peggy Lee, Ella Fitzgerald.
Carmen McRae, who's Lucy's particular favorite. Who else? Dinah Washington.
Carmen McRae, Dinah Washington,
Dinah Washington's my favorite.
There you go.
Yeah. All the old Mercury records.
Yeah.
But all of the greats, of course, like Anita O'Day.
Actually, Lucy, you come and sit here. I'll go and do the dishes.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Right, I shall leave you to it.
All right. We'll get to you.
And enjoy.
See you later.
There you go. David and I want to do something on the wives of bass players. We definitely.
It started with Rick Wills.
Are you thinking of a fundraiser or some counselling for them?
Counselling would be good.
Anyway, but no, we did actually have we've been talking to a lot of your peers, Carmen Rojas, Rick Wills, Michael Manring, Larry Grenadier,
Bruce Thomas, which was hilarious.
That was a good one. We've never actually met. I mean, I've worked with, I've done a couple of things with Elvis Costello, but I've never met Bruce. Our paths have never crossed. But
well, I must tell you, he before we did the interview, he was sort of searching us to make sure that we actually were real. And so he goes, "Oh, you're the one with the coffee table basses." Because all my I'll give you.
Show him that we and actually we did a feature on this, but David insists on these. He's from the
massive 6-string basses and pink strings and blue strings because I can.
Yeah.
Why not?
And of course, you see my bass in the background here. It's one of those old 4-string Fender basses, David.
Yes, I've heard of them. They're vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
The bass of the proletariat, the working class, basically.
What ended up happening with Bruce, we started sending him pictures of the basses this way with wine glasses and such on it.
I'll send you that. I'll send Dave Swift. I will send you the thing we did with eating with your bass and all our favorite bass players: Mike Viseglia, Paul Page,
spaghetti on it.
Yeah. So
put a few magazines over it.
We did, yes. So,
as a matter of fact, Tom, I never told you, he sent me a picture of a coffee table and said, "Does this look familiar? You just need to put strings on it."
I know. Well, the thing is, I'm glad the stigma isn't quite as bad with the six-string, particularly six-string and boutique basses as it was back in the day. I remember coming to London, and I turned up to London with a Ken Smith six-string, quilted maple, gold hardware. I didn't get many gigs, not on electric bass. I mean, I got loads of gigs on acoustic bass. Yeah. But as soon as people just didn't want to see those kind of instruments,
Let's start off with the state of the instrument. And David, David has gotten a lot of guff on the extended range. I wonder why the stigma associated with that instrument, because when you look at the electric bass, it was a groundbreaking instrument in the first place. It changed pop music, the course of pop music history. So you would think that bass players would always be on the forefront of innovation. And it's almost, to my ears, it's the right tool for the right job in terms of,
Well, also, if you go back and I'm a big fan of Anthony Jackson. He's a real hero of mine in so many ways, and known as the inventor of the modern day six-string bass. And he said, the contrabass. Yeah, the contrabass, exactly. And he said in an interview, I love reading Anthony's interviews. There's so much sort of stuff in there. But he said, why wasn't the bass guitar six strings in the beginning? Because actually, the bass guitar, it's there's that whole thing about it's a bass, not a guitar. Actually, it is a guitar. It's just the lowest pitched member of the guitar family. I've been playing double bass all my adult life. So if you put a double bass and a bass guitar next to it and a guitar, which does the bass guitar resemble more? The acoustic double bass or an electric guitar, So Anthony says, why didn't it have six strings from day one? And I guess from a marketing point of view, Leo Fender was more used to dealing with guitars, and also he saw an opportunity to make bass players' lives a lot easier by making a more portable instrument and one that didn't feed back and you could amplify. So, of course, he put the four strings on it because they wanted to attract upright bass players. He wanted to sell a load of instruments. Mm-hmm. But actually, I think Anthony's got a great point. Why not give it six strings? Because it's still technically more part of the guitar family, I feel personally.
There's so much we could say about Anthony. As a matter of fact, Andy Robinson?
Yes.
He just did that book, Hold It.
Yes. I haven't got a copy yet, but I've heard lots about it, actually.
I've got it somewhere. I did a review for Bass Musician Magazine on it, and it's really a good job. The thing about Anthony, he's always right. I'll tell you a funny story. A number of years ago, I called him on New Year's Eve just to wish him a happy New Year and such. And we were talking. I said, Anthony, I feel I'm in a rut. And we started jawing on that. Then he goes to me, David, I'm going to be in the rut for the next 30 years. I completely shut my mouth. No more complaints.
Anthony, because I've got an Anthony Jackson Federa six-string, his signature model, and because I always wanted one because of...
So you don't have a car?
No, exactly. Won't have one at all. No. Far too expensive and too awkward and annoying. And I haven't got a coffee table either, as it goes. But I remember, going to the Federa workshop and meeting him there. And I've been following him for years and transcribing most of his parts, but I was so kind of intimidated by him. And that wasn't him really, just my own feelings on it, but I just had that feeling that he was like one of these sort of gurus, live at the top of some Himalayan mountain, and you get to visit him and you can only ask him 3 questions, and they can't be, how are you today? What do you think of the weather? You've got to pick something with some real gravitas and some depth to it, So, because, I think he's that kind of guy, isn't he? He's a great intellectual. He's very academic and studious, So I think we had a brief conversation about James Jamerson, I think, because I knew that if I spoke about James, that would be
a good starting point.
Yeah. And I said, I'm a fan. I've done loads of transcriptions as well, but yeah, I had to have one of those basses. And I've got some lovely photographs of Anthony, because if you get one of those, he sets it up personally. He does all the intonation. He does the truss rod. He does everything on it. And I've got pictures of him actually doing that in the Federa workshop. And of course, he signs the back of it as well, so that's quite pride of place.
Well, you're right about the Himalayan mountain thing. And I'll tell you why. Back when we were all kids, I say when I was having a hamster running my amplifier, because I always play passive. This drummer named Casey Conrad had been in a band with this kid at the time, Anthony Jackson, 15-year-old kid who was locked up in his room in Brooklyn.
Right.
So a couple of years before I met him, essentially had heard about him, and the Himalayan mountain is not too far off.
Right.
Really, somewhere I have a picture of me with one of my fedoras. They were brilliant instruments. I remember they built me a short scale one, and that didn't last.
And it's fedoras. I have a fedora. Well, not quite a fedora.
I'm sure many people have got them mixed up.
Okay, so if there's no
wearing a bass on my head,
you can see that was a short scale 6-string with a P bass pickup.
Oh wow!
Wait a minute, David, pull that picture. What are the trousers there? What do you got going on there?
Oh, that's Willie wear. You know, I was always in the height of fashion.
I thought it was a kilt.
It looks like a kilt.
This is pre-spandex, gentlemen. And remember, spandex is the most forgiving of fabrics. And here, this is, I guess it was an Imperial. And of course, Vinny had me do a signature, and he, it's hard to see. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I can see that.
But there's a signature in abalone. Abalone.
But yeah, Anthony's an he's an interesting guy. I've met him. And in fact, I think that Lucy and I were with him when he had a stroke. Like we were with him literally minutes before it happened, because he was in London playing with Hiromi at the Jazz Cafe, and Lucy and I were chatting with him afterwards, actually on stage. We climbed up, he called us up there, and we were chatting. He asked about the bass. He said, "How's it going? You still enjoying it?" All that kind of thing. And then Lucy and I left. And then the following day, I was back on tour with Jools Holland. And I got a phone call from Anthony's the tour manager, who I knew and I'd met that night. And he sort of said, "Anthony's in hospital. You know, he's had this sort of stroke or something like that." And he was asking me how Anthony was after the show. He said, "How did he sound to you?" And I sort of said, "Well, you know, Anthony," I said, "he's very deliberate. You know, he doesn't rush things. You know, he seemed to me as he always was." And I think they were just trying to ascertain, did he have like a mini stroke during the gig? Did it happen while we were chatting with him? You know, I hope he wasn't suggesting I was the cause of it, you know, but bless him, you know, but no, he was fine. But I believe what happened is that, you know, when he left the club, I think Simon Phillips was on drums. They left together. And I think Anthony fell outside the venue. And I think that's when something happened, you know, so it was after we saw him, but it was only like a few minutes afterward, you know. So so the tour manager would call me up because he was just trying to ascertain when it actually happened, you know. But I was quite shocked to hear he was in the hospital, but so glad that he was okay, you know. But I've seen him play with Hiromi a few times, but you know, but I love the stuff he did obviously with Shaka Khan. I love the stuff he did with Steve Khan, no relation of course.
The OJs, Garland Jeffries, I mean, come on.
Yeah, the whole sort of Gamble and Huff thing, you know, and you know, for the love of money, you know, that classic line. I mean, it's so amazing wherever you kind of go and you hear that. And I could be in a toy shop with Oscar, you know, or a clothes shop with Lucy, and you can hear Anthony kind of with the pick and the phaser, you know, and I'm thinking, wow.
That was For the Love of Money, the OJs, with the great Anthony Jackson on bass. Let's get back to talking to Dave Swift. This is Notes from an Artist on CygnusRadio.com.
And it's so nice to know he won that lawsuit. You know, he's actually getting paid for it. Right. That is wonderful.
Well, yeah, because it is so unusual for someone to get a writing credit for a part. They did, but of course, it's the opening of the song. It's the
hook.
Yeah, it's everything about
everyone
it.
knows it before they hear anything else, you know. So, but yeah, I love him. I think he's you know, he's amazing.
That is an interesting perspective, and I could now kind of see that the 6th string is really the more pure of the instrument, not the 4th string, because as you mentioned, as you observed, it's a guitar. It is a guitar. That's Anthony. Anthony refers to himself as a bass guitarist. And he tells his students, "You are a bass guitarist." So really, the true electric bass is the 6th string and not the 4th string. Are you prepared to say that in a court of law, gentlemen?
I'll happily say it, but of course, then you could argue, you know, because I've got a couple of 7-string basses. I've actually got three 7 strings. You know, what are
the strings? 7? What have you got? What's the?
Yeah, so basically, it's a 6 string, you know, with the low B, but it's got a high F.
Oh, okay, wow.
On the top, but I guess, you know, some people, have 6-string basses that begins with a low E and then does that. And some people have them tuned like a guitar. I mean, for me, it's got to be all fourths. I mean, interestingly enough, I play guitar. I've been playing more guitar recently. And over the years, the guitar's always thwarted me. My 2 older brothers played it when I was a kid. Right. And it's probably the first instrument that I ever really picked up at home. Right. And as a kid, those strings used to kill my fingers. Those like acoustic guitar strings. And so, but years later, after I became a bassist and I tried to play guitar, I just could never get over that third tuning.
Yeah, sure.
It just drove me nuts, the G to the B, And so I just kept putting it off, and I'd come back and say, no, I can do this. And then eventually I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to tune the 2 top strings up a semitone. So B goes to C, E goes to an F, all fourths. But then I thought to myself, yeah, but this is going to affect stuff that I want to do in it. And then I started to Google guitar in fourths. And it's quite a common thing. A lot more players do it than I thought. I mean, Stanley Jordan has always done it.
Well, right.
Alan Holdsworth, famously said, the late great guitarist, he sort of said if he could start over again on guitar, 100% he would tune in fourths. Yeah. Because it just makes everything sort of even. Whatever shape you use, it's the same on every group.
Right, it's symmetrical. Yeah, it's very...
Yeah, so as soon as I did that on guitar, I'm thinking, oh my God, I can play this. It makes sense now. And you have to make adjustments. There's certain types of music that you can't play on it. You can't do lots of open chords. It's not going to be very helpful around the campfire playing in fourths. But the majority of the guys that do it are actually jazz and fusion guys. And I did it so I could play some jazz on it myself, So it's kind of like a high-pitched bass.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. What I've done with my low Bs, I've added detuners. Oh. So I go down to a low A. It's much easier if you're constipated. It helps. It helps. I just wanted to go back. One thing about Anthony that was great for me, an early bass player interview, he talked about his love of the Messiaen organ.
Sure.
So I spent a long time listening to that stuff. And to be perfectly honest, there's a lot of bass playing down there,
I did the same thing. Whatever he recommended, I listened to, and I've got all of that stuff, listened to a lot of it. It's not a great first date background music, is it? No. If you're trying to woo a lady, you still probably want to put on Teddy Pendergrass or something like that.
After 30 years, I certainly wouldn't do that with my wife, even now. But yes, there is that Teddy Pendergrass thing. Although actually it's more Barry White.
Barry White.
Whatever.
Who I actually worked with. Barry. Well, I did a TV show with him in the mid-90s. And in fact, interestingly enough, I've been with Jools 30 years now. This very year is my 30th anniversary, but it's also my 40th anniversary being a pro bass player. And, when I started out in the late 70s, throughout the 80s, of course, you had to do loads of slap stuff because it was what was expected. It was what it was called for. It was that era. But then by the time I got to London, that was slowly on the wane, and I was playing jazz on upright bass. So the slap thing for me, and I just thought to myself, you know what, I can live without it, and I love certain players doing it, big Marcus fan with it, but I could see the times are changing, and I'm thinking, what's the point in sort of spending a lot of time on a technique that I'm probably never going to get called for? Well, that's what it seemed like in the industry. But anyway, we did this TV show in the mid-90s, and Barry Wright, we were the house band. It wasn't Jools' show, it was a different one, and every week was a different guest. We had Shaka Khan on, Roger Daltrey, Cher, and Barry came on. And we did 2 songs with him, and one of them had a tiny little bit of slap on it, And I hadn't done it for a few years. I'm thinking, well, I can do this. I've still got some chops left, And I think it's the only, and it's on YouTube somewhere, and I think the song's called Show Yo Right, it's called. And I think it's the only footage you'll ever see or hear me playing, like, sort of slap. And you know what? It's the only time I've been called to do it in 30 years.
Mark King hasn't called you for technique lessons?
Well, do you know what? I just thought to myself, it's not that I'm completely against it, but it was just interesting that, considering that I'm playing in more commercial music industry, I do play a lot of jazz, but I'm playing with a lot of pop artists, like Adele and Ed Sheeran and Amy Winehouse, those guys. And no one ever requested any slap stuff in 30 years, So I'm kind of quite glad that I made that decision to leave that technique behind. And like I said, there's some players I still love watching doing it, but I just think for me, there's many other things that I'd rather be working than a technique that I might get called once in 6 months. And for that reason, there's guys that specialize in that. But it's still interesting. In 30 years of being a TV and radio house show bassist, there's only been one song where I've had to do it.
I don't think many 6-string players do play slap.
It's not really set up for that, really. I mean,
well, sure it is.
You think so?
If you have a Federa or something like I have, where the string spacing, a jazz or a P bass spacing,
okay,
you can do it. But I think you're absolutely right. You get to a certain point in rock and roll, and then all of a sudden you hear Bitches Brew or something like that. And all of a sudden, I got to learn a lot more. Then all of a sudden, the slap technique comes in. I got to learn that. Put that in the back burner because there's so much more I've got to learn. And I don't mean this in the negative, the real stuff of how to actually do bass lines, how to solo. How many times in the middle of a solo are you going to go, I think I'm going to slap this section?
I mean, I have to admit, it's like, I don't know how important it is to be able to sort of do this well, because like I said, I don't do a lot of freelance things. And actually my freelance stuff outside of Jools it's all jazz. It's all on upright bass, so I don't really do, those function things. I don't do like cruise ships, which I did when I was a teenager, whatever. So I don't want to say to any younger players, don't bother with this thing, because just because I've never been asked to do it or don't get called to do it doesn't mean it's not needed. But I do wonder how, I guess what it is as well, it's great for trade shows, isn't it? Because it's the one thing that's visually and sonically something that will draw a crowd. Because it's very, very kind of flash to watch, as opposed to just someone sitting there just playing. But I still wonder how used it is in sort of in the industry. I don't know. On Jools' TV show, which I've been doing for like almost 30 years, I think I've probably seen like 4 bass players that have done it in like all that time. So the music that I'm hearing and seeing, there isn't that call for it. But, if I see a video online, like on Instagram, whatever, and if the opening thing is a guy with his hand like this ready to go,
you turn it off.
I just can't.
Well, it's interesting. I find that the slap passages, which are the best, are the ones that are probably most simple. What comes to mind is David Hungate on, remember Lowdown, Boz Scaggs, where he just thumps on the octave.
Do you know what? I've just realized that's the other time I got to do it with Boz Scaggs.
Okay, well, there you go.
He came on Jools' show and we played with him. So thank you for reminding me. Barry White and Boz Scaggs are the only 2 artists in 30 years.
And the irony of that is David Hungate actually double-tracked that. That was not done. He did the E thump and then he did the high E thump separately. If you use a medium to light gauge string or even a tape wound, which I love, the Labella tapes, you can actually get the slap sound by just plucking the string a little bit harder. I mean, you're not going to be speedy Marcus Miller, but you can actually do that. And if you pluck at the base of the neck, you can also get a pataka. You don't have to go thumb happy, because what happens when you use your thumb, I find that the bottom drop.
Yeah.
But it is
thumb happy. I like that. There's a book involved.
That's my new book.
Yeah. I mean, I do often wonder if and when I get called on Jools' show, if someone finally does present me the song I have to play, and it is full on slap bass thing, I often wonder what I would do. I mean, I'd like to think I would have a go at getting some chops back, even though I literally haven't done it for decades, But I still can't imagine it happening. I can't imagine anyone coming onto Jools' show, TV or radio, and asking me to do it, because it just hasn't happened in all this time. But there's a great quote. I think there's a book called, is it The Bassist's Handbook? Mm-hmm. And I think it's by Greg Mutter.
Okay.
His name is, and he says something, and he's talking about different kind of players, like amateur players, semi-pros, and pro players. And I think he said something to the effect that, it's not an exact quote, forgive me, but he sort of said, even if pro players aren't always prepared for every eventuality, the sign of a true pro is the fact they will do everything in their power to. So they're not always ready for every eventuality, but they'll prepare for it. If they've got enough time, they'll do some research, they'll do some practice. They'll apply themselves to it. The sign of a true pro. He might not. So it would be the same with me. If next week Jools said, "Okay, we need to do this," and I'd be thinking, "Okay, I'm doing it for a while," but man alive would I spend the next week working away on this, This bizarre gig once, and it was for a friend of mine, and the gig was Chapman's stick and classical guitar. Now, at the time, I'd owned a couple of sticks, but I'd never really I just fooled around with them. I wasn't the proper stick player, and I hadn't played guitar at that point. And I said to my friend, he was like a touring show, and he got them to sort of write all the parts, mostly stick, one song on guitar. And he said, I need you to det for me. And I said, are you kidding me? I said, I don't own a stick. I haven't owned one for years. I haven't played one for years. He said, but you used to play one, right? I said, kind of, And he said, listen, and I said, look, there's other guys out there that are better stick players. He said, they can't read as well as you, because the charts were really heavy duty, like double stave piano parts, And I kept saying to him, I said, and for me to turn down the work and to turn down a challenge is very unusual, because I'm all for rising to the occasion. But even I thought to myself, my God, you might as well be asking me to play a harp or just something, a bassoon or something like that, But anyway, he kept on at me. He said, you've got to do it because you're the only one that can read the parts and you've owned a stick and you're kind of familiar. Anyway, against my better judgment, I said yes, and he sent me the charts, and I looked at these parts were like terrifying, because he was a proper stick player, guitarist, bass player, And I'm looking at this thinking, I've almost got to start from scratch with this thing, and especially with guitar, because at the time I didn't play it. And that's what I did for like 2 weeks or a week. I locked myself in the room, like 10 hours a day, and I just worked out these charts, put fingerings all over it. And I did the show. I actually did it. And it's quite funny, because some of the guys in the band said, wow, you did a better job than the other guy, I hope he doesn't hear this. But it was that thing that Greg Nutter said about sort of, even if I wasn't ready for it immediately, because I had some time, I put the time in, I put the effort in, and it was a monumental effort. It was because it was literally like learning a new instrument, because I hadn't played a stick properly ever, and I hadn't owned one for like 8 years. And they're tricky to play anyway, but then to play these kind of charts, But yeah, I guess I had a lot of grit and tenacity back then,
It's interesting you said that, because I was playing with Ian McDonald after he left Foreigner, and he was getting back to his sort of King Crimson-y kind of roots.
Nice.
I went to Manny's and bought a stick. And first part, I then had to buy a stool so I could sit and practice. Yeah. And I'm like, I got one of the top stick players to give me instruction. And I'm getting frustrated. Mm-hmm. I walked down 48th Street at Alex Music. Tom, you remember Alex Music?
I remember. I've spent many a shekel at Alex Music.
The number 7 Federa 6-string bass was in the window. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, sold the stick, bought the bass, and started doing the two-handed thing on a 6-string bass. So obviously my question, were you playing a 6-string bass at that time? And did you think somewhere maybe you could adapt?
I think, the first time I ever got a stick was I was working on the cruise ships, and we were in San Francisco, and I bought one from a shop, And I did actually visit Emmett Chapman years later. I went to his home when I got a second one. But I think I was playing 6-string at the time. But the main reason why I got a stick, it was very, very specific. And it was, my first instrument is actually trombone. I started off at school. And then a year later, took up bass guitar. And then a couple of weeks later, took up acoustic bass. So those are my key 3 instruments. But I never played a chordal instrument. My knowledge of music was through those 3 instruments, just playing lines and melodies, whatever. So, by the time I moved to London, my knowledge of harmony wasn't great. It was very, very fundamental. And I have tried the piano. In fact, one of the people I studied with when I first moved to London was a very amazing American double bass player, jazz player called Michael Moore.
Oh, sure.
Michael's last gig was playing with Brubeck,
right?
But I mean, he was unbelievable. He just happened to be living in the UK at the time. He was giving lessons, so I went to him because he's an amazing bow player. So I went for him for some arco lessons, but also improvisation as well. But one of the first things he did when I went to his house was, I said, "Do you play piano?" I said, "Not really." I said, I know where the notes are, and I kind of know a little bit about chords. And before we even touched the bass, he said, get on the keyboard, a little tiny Casio keyboard he had. And he started to give me piano lessons. Before we did it, he said, because believe you me, he said, this will open things up so much, And that's the reason why I got a stick prior to that, because I'd always wanted to play some piano, but I just didn't ever bond with it. So the stick for me was an instrument to learn harmony on. I didn't buy it. I mean, yeah, I'd seen Tony Levin with one. Of course, we all. I predominantly got it to learn harmony with, whereas I still would have been better off with a keyboard because of its uniformity, you know. But that was why I got one in the first place, you know. But yeah, I never fully bonded with it. So for that reason, I never got into the two-handed thing on bass. I mean, I like most people, I fooled around with it. But I think with me, my job has always been to, you know, to play songs and stuff, you know, to play the fundamentals opposed to, I mean, some people have criticized me. They've seen me on Jools' show and they say, Dave, if I was you, man, I wouldn't just be standing, I'd be putting my foot on the monitor. I'd be playing really flamboyant things, you know. And I said, and you'd be fired.
Bingo.
I sort of said it's a hell of a way to hand your notice in, you know. So for me, you know, I've the fundamentals are always the key thing for me, you know. So. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that because at the Berklee College of Music, when I went there, it was mandatory that you took piano 1, 2.
Right. Same at Miami. Yeah.
Even drummers. And it was kind of funny because...
Especially drummers. Well, some people say the piano is a percussion instrument anyway.
Yeah, sure, you can argue that.
Yeah. Tune after they were playing on it in some of the practice. There's no doubt about that. There's a story, and I never got, you know, I've never asked Keith Jarrett. I'd love to interview Keith Jarrett and find out that he once destroyed a piano in a piano room at the Berklee Center because essentially it was so dreadfully out of tune that he just couldn't stand it anymore. I'd like to find out if that's a true story or just an...
What, so he actually attacked the piano in frustration, do you mean?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because, you know, over here, we've got, you know, there's a jazz pianist called Jamie Cullum.
Yes, yeah, sure, yeah.
And we know Jamie, we've worked with him a lot. But when he first came on the scene, you know, his thing was very much playing percussion on the piano. And I literally...
Jerry Lee Lewis, yeah.
He'd stand up and he'd be sort of drumming on it and standing on it, you know. Yeah, I just dread to think the state of those things at the end of it, you know, because they probably look... But it was done with a different reason. It was done affectionately, but still in an...
And contrary to that, you know, you think about all the jazz clubs in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and those pianos were notoriously out of tune.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Day one, really.
Yeah, and that drives me crazy. You know, I get some of the whole tuning thing, because I don't think I have perfect pitch, but you know, the tuning thing, I can hear it when something's out of tune. And when I get students come and immediately they want to play for me, and they just start and they don't even tune up, and I'm just thinking, that's the first thing you should do. And they're playing out of tune. I'm thinking, wow, that's going to mess your ear up further down the line. You know, if you're just so used to taking your bass out and the machine heads have been twisted,
that's right,
and you're not even aware of it. That's the scary thing. You know,
give them a fretless.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to tune those.
Well, I think for me as well, it's interesting because, you know, being a trombonist first and foremost, and then taking up double bass, you know, I kind of think, man, your ears have to be so spot on with those things.
That was Sir Tom Jones doing Flip Flop Fly with Jools Holland and his orchestra, Dave Swift on bass. I mean, come on, how lucky could Dave Swift be? He's playing with Tom Jones. How cool is that? This is Notes from an Artist, CygnusRadio.com.
You know, and people say to me about playing upright, and I said, well, it's the same with trombone. I said, it's ears, muscle memory, and repetition.
Yeah.
You know, that's what because I don't use any markers on upright. I just find them, when I've had stick basses that have had them on there, they just drives me nuts. I find them more of a distraction than a help, you know, so I'd rather... Yeah.
Well, Gary Willis was over my house one day, and I'm also a proponent of clean, no lines on the fretless. And he was always, to make the point, I said, when you go up high, there is no way that the fret marker is anywhere near where the actual note is.
Right.
It's impossible.
And the neck expands and contracts anyway, so it's really a hindrance to have lines.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even a fretted bass is not right all the way up and down, you know, so...
And for me, it was the look of it as well. You know, so all my fretless basses are all completely plain.
Yeah.
I mean, dots on the side are very useful because, I mean, obviously, if you look at an acoustic bass, the actual the neck before it hits the body is relatively short. It's a very short space, Whereas obviously with the bass guitar, it's a lot longer, so there's more room for error.
Right.
And with upright, you've got the heel, you've got the shoulders, you've got certain points that help you
demark. Yeah.
Whereas on a bass guitar, the neck is, so dots on the side, I'm all for, but the front, I don't think, the worst ones are when you get a fretless, where the lines are where the fret was, but then they've put a dot middle of it where it's just carnage. I just can't even, I don't even want to, and then the dot on the side will probably be somewhere else. I'm thinking, oh, no.
Well, I'll tell you, I've got a longer scale upright. I don't know. It's still a hell of a lot of trouble.
Well, you know what? Let's be honest. Upright basses, particularly acoustic double basses, they're not for the faint-hearted. And here's what makes me laugh. There's this kind of, well, I say laugh, I'm not being unsympathetic, but the amount of kind of bass guitarists that I've known, whether they're students or whether they're pro players, that never, ever played upright before. They were lifelong bass guitarists. And they just get to a point and they realize they're missing out on a lot of work here. I mean, I played them both from the time I was 15. So I was always a doubler. But it's the ones that did it years later. And it's the ones that just think, it's 4 strings, E, A, D, G, it's a bass, you play bass lines on it, and it's almost like that's it. That's the qualifications for it, And then, of course, a month later, their fingers are bloodied stumps. They can't work out why they can't play in tune, cracking open, the bridge has fallen. And I'm saying, welcome to my world, It's like, it really just not for the faint-hearted, that's a dedicated.
But Dave, there's something else about an upright that I believe all bass players should even just take a quick shot at. It's that the open strings are your friends.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And to an electric player, it may be something they think about.
Yes.
To an upright player, they really are such a helpful thing.
Absolutely.
It really, my bass goes back to, I guess it's 1936. It was made in Czechoslovakia. It has such a big sound, but at the same time, because the fingerboard is longer, it's a bugger. But it's so much fun to play. Sure. It really is. It's a wonderful instrument. But I wanted to ask you something about your trombone stuff. Do you know all the trombone jokes?
I know a few.
Do you remember beepers? They were the right?
Yeah.
So there's
yeah. I know where this is going, but do it.
Yeah.
You're indulging him.
Trombonist.
Is it the height of optimism?
That's it.
Go on.
And
David, tell the joke for the listeners, please.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So what do you call a trombonist with a beeper? Or now we can call it a cell phone, an optimist. How do you know there's a trombonist at your front door?
Oh.
The Domino's truck is right there. And the follow-up to that
I haven't heard that one.
How does a trombonist make his car more aerodynamic? He takes off the Domino's sign.
All right. David, I just got word our show has been canceled. So.
Well, the bass show is canceled. Now we'll do a comedy hour.
Yeah, we've left the pizza endorsements.
Well, David, one of the words you mentioned was preparation. And when we spoke in London in 2019, you went into how much you prepare for shows and working with different artists. And preparation also means education. And that is one of David and I's pet peeves or lack thereof. We spoke with Denny Sywell, was it yesterday, David, or the day before? And he said, if you can't read music, you're not a musician. We spoke with Neil Jason a few weeks ago. And Neil was opinion, if you can't read fly poop on a music staff, stay out of the studio. And we try to impart to our listeners, and David, of course, through his books, the power of getting a formal education in music. I mean, now, of course, with YouTube, you can get all sorts of tutorials, many which are inaccurate. David, we can talk about the horrors of tablature. And how tablature, to my eyes and ears and brain, is harder to read than music notation.
I totally agree.
And we kind of figure that with the electric bass, because it was born of the rock era, when you can play 3 chords and be in a band, that music education for bass is kind of lacking. And it even took a while before electric bass books came into existence. But it seems like, again, now with digital media, especially YouTube, people want to take the fast track to learning the electric bass, when really, like any other instrument, it's a journey. It's a lifelong endeavor to learn to play.
And there's so many different avenues, as you said, about doing it. There isn't just one strict way. I mean, when I started out, like I said, I had classical trombone lessons at school. Right. And interestingly enough, I found my old trombone teacher. He's still with us. I discovered via social media, and I spoke with him a few months ago, and it was amazing because I discovered something that I didn't even realize. And this is to do with my start in music. I'd attempted to play an instrument earlier on. I wanted to play sax. That didn't work out. Right. I wanted to play trombone. They didn't have one. So I forgot about music and got into sports. I love basketball. I still do. So I thought I was going to be an athlete. When I got to 14, I was still, because I sang in a choir, I love music. I still wanted to play an instrument. And I went to this trombone teacher. I was 14. And I said, I want to play the trombone. And he said, you're too old. And I said, really? And he said, well, yeah. He said, you're too old for me to take on because you're going to be leaving school soon. So anyway, he gave me the trombone. I took it away for 2 weeks. He gave me the chance, and I came back, and he went, okay, you can do this, And then, and I took my exams, and like he I was his best student, in his words. He said, yeah. But anyway, when I spoke to him recently on the phone, he said to me, the school curriculum were the people telling me not to take you on, because at 14, over here, you are due to leave school at 16 right. generally. And they sort of say, don't take on students any older than, say, 12 or 13 or something like that. But right. So I only discovered a few months ago, he stuck his own neck out. He put his neck on the line because he heard that I had some talent after a couple of weeks of playing it. And he, so in other words, he could have gone, yeah, you're too old. Them's the rules. That could have been that's it. My whole life could have changed, but because he did that for me, so, and I only discovered this a few months ago. So, but anyway, studying with him, you had to read music, that was the thing. It was proper formal training. So, but I found it quite easy, and I was a terrible academic. I've got no qualifications in any other academic subject, other than the trombone. Everything the planets came together like this. So by the time I switched to bass, I was reading 4 clefs on the trombone because I was playing in dance bands, pop, funk, orchestras, and in brass bands you have to play treble clef only. In orchestras you have to play bass, tenor, and alto clef because of the range of the instrument. Sure. And they put 4 clefs. So by the time I became a bass player, there was nothing that I couldn't read because I'd already played the most complex music of every style on the trombone before I even got to bass.
Now, did you study with a Samandel book?
Well, as a bass player, I was self-taught. So we had a school band. We wanted to play some more jazzy kind of stuff. And we had everything but a bass player. So I sort of said, because I'd fooled around on my brother's guitars, so I was the only one that even held a stringed instrument. I volunteered, got a bass guitar, which was a K Fender Precision copy.
Everybody loved those, yeah.
Actually, it was about this time.
Oh, my God. And it weighed more than a black hole. It was just mad as well. It was a real boat anchor, but it was a start. And then my trombone teacher, who I was still studying with, so I was 15, he saw my progress. Now, he was also a fixer in my town. He would book musicians for theatre work, sessions, whatever. So he was a great trombone teacher, but he was watching my progress on bass as well. And when he saw, because he thought I could use this guy, because he wanted the trombone gigs himself. Oh. He's not going to give me the trombone gigs, but when he saw me playing bass, he just thought I can book this guy. So, and he said to me, great piece of advice. He said, listen, if you want to do this for a living, and I think you're good enough to do this, I've not even considered this at all. But he said, if you take up upright bass, you'll get way more work than if you just choose electric. So that was so this guy, Phil Johnson, his name is, he changed everything for me. I literally owe him everything. So great trombone teacher, taught me how to read, but also advised me to take up the upright bass as well. So that my reading was already in great shape, but the problem there, it was a blessing and a curse, because so I was getting tons of work after that in pit, doing pit work in shows, sure. in recording sessions, and everything was written down. The bass parts were written out, right. Note for note. So no chords, no improvisation at all. And life was good. I'm thinking, this is fantastic, And then a friend of mine who's a fellow trombonist, he said, you've just started to play the bass, haven't you? I said, yeah. He said, you need to listen to this guy. And he lent me the Weather Report album, Night Passage.
That was Night Passage by Weather Report featuring Jaco Pastorius. Let's continue our conversation with Dave Swift. This is Notes from an Artist on CygnusRadio.com.
1980, I was 16, He said, you need to listen to this guy. I just said, Jaco, but what's this guy called? And I just thought, oh my days, I'd never. So all the stuff I'd been doing had been very basic, standard bass lines, nothing.
Pre-Jaco era, David, right? We do, Dave.
Exactly. We always talk pre-Jaco, post-Jaco.
Yeah. And that was it. That everything changed. And I just thought to myself, oh my God, I didn't realize there was this whole new world of that kind of playing.
That was Weather Report doing Rockin' in Rhythm, featuring Jaco Pastorius. This is Notes from an Artist on CygnusRadio.com.
I didn't realize that people were doing that on the bass. I'd heard sax players doing it and piano players, but I'd never heard that before. And I'm thinking, oh boy, I thought I was just doing great, kind of going boom, gong, 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 gong.
When you were born, Cream was about ready to start happening. So the stuff that, to me, there's such a correspondence and a connection between Jaco and Jack Bruce.
Okay. I mean, I never did meet Jaco. I've actually played with Jack, but I played trombone with him.
I opened for Jack for a number of shows. As amazing as his bass playing was, his stride piano just blew me away.
Oh, I didn't know he played that.
Oh my gosh! And it's funny too, because I was at one of my 6-string basses. I had to deal with Warwick.
Okay.
Oddly enough, with Woody. We were at the Music Mess. Jack was there. It was 10 a.m. He was drinking cognac. I stayed away. To get back to the story, though, the reality is when you were born, you were pre-Jaco, but post-Jack. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So you immediately went into pits and everything where me being a little older than you, it was like rock and roll. I'm band things. So I didn't really learn to read well until I was 17, 18 when I went to Berkeley because I had no choice. I had to. As Tom and I always talk about the Carol Kay books, when you don't know how to read, they're really difficult. And once again, ask the question, Tom, what the hell?
What is a boogaloo?
Exactly.
I don't know, but it sounds good. Well, that's the good point, because going back to your original question, there were no bass teachers. I could not find a bass guitar teacher where I lived. There just weren't any. I looked everywhere. So for me, I learned through those books. It was like the Carol Kay books, and watching TV, watching Top of the Pops. And also watching one of Jools' early TV shows, which was called The Tube, co-hosted with Paula Yates, Yes. And I literally was just sitting there watching the bass players' hands and their fingers, seeing it. That's how I learned. But it was those early books. There was no one to study from. So the thing for me that I struggled with was ears, because at that time everything I was given was written down, and then I started to do stuff where people would say, "Okay, we'll jam this one out," and they'll just shout a key, and I'm kind of going, "Well, hang on, what do you mean jam? Where's the chart? Where's the music?" And they said there isn't one. Just busk it. And man alive, did I come crashing down on that, because I'd never experienced that.
As a matter of fact, the day we interviewed you at Terminal Studios, two of the other guys that were in were Phil Spalding and Mickey Feet. And, great studio credits with both those guys. Phil Spalding doesn't read music. And Mickey Feet was telling us that, producers hired you for your field. They didn't necessarily hire you for your dexterity or your reading chops, because Mickey said back in those days, they booked the whole day. Rock stars booked the whole day in the studio, and they could work parts out and just nail them. So that's actually, in a sense, a different skill than the reader. I had that experience when I was at Miami University School of Music. All these jazz guys could not just jam on an E7. They were lost. And they played everything with a bebop swing feel. So it's interesting that even for the educated musician, being able to busk it is a skill you must develop.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And for me, it was baptism by fire, because it happened. I always sort of say that you often learn the best lessons in life under the most awkward, excruciating circumstances. When you're embarrassed and I think it's like the Charlie Parker story, isn't it? With the cymbal comes crashing in front of him, and mine was probably just people glaring at me, why do you not know this standard or whatever, because everything I played in, like I said, had parts, but it started to change. And all of a sudden I then started to do sessions and people couldn't be bothered to write out a bass part for you. They just started.
You'd be lucky if you got a lead sheet.
Yeah, exactly. And it started to be chords and then eventually nothing. You would just turn up and you had to listen to the track. But I saw those changes happening. So I realized quickly that I had to, really develop my ears. And the only way that I could do that was, deliberately, when I moved to London, was taking gigs where I knew there was going to be no music, often playing with people I'd not played with before. I didn't know what the tunes were going to be. I just thought I need to put myself in this fire pit. Yeah. and so learning on the bandstand, it was quite old school, and it was a shock to me because I was so used to that sort of the safety net of the chart for so long. So it took me. So when you hear guys now saying, "Oh, the reading thing," I just can't begin to imagine that. The reading thing for me was easy.
Yeah, that's it. That's so inverted. Yeah.
Take the chart away, and it's like what But that was a long time ago. So as time went on, everything balanced out, So these days, I'm happy to do either. And it's important for me to do both as well. If I could only do one or the other, I would definitely, my career would suffer if one thing was taken away now.
Well, it's interesting. Also, David and I spoke with George Porter Jr. A few weeks ago. Now, you think of George Porter, not only did they make records with the Meters, but they did hit records with Dr. John, Tori Amos, Robert Palmer, Patti LaBelle. George was telling us they just walked in, they barely got lead sheets, and quite essentially the parts they came up with made the hit records, like we were talking about Anthony. So, there's a whole cadre of studio musicians. Another guy who is like that is Earl Slick, who I'm sure you've worked with. Sure. And Earl's, when, all those parts he did on David Bowie records, and the interview asked him, why don't you get writing credits on that? Well, that's why they hire me, and that's why I charge what I do, because I come in with a hook. So it really is an important balance.
And it makes you wonder if some of those great players, had they have had the start that I had, which was before you even play an instrument, here's the book.
Right.
Here's the method book,
Right.
And of course, my trombone teacher at the time, he did that because that was the curriculum. That's what you had to do, I mean, I'm hoping these days that kids are given more options to study by ear as well, because I think, if you just start off with that reading thing and you get so down the rabbit hole with it, it can be so detrimental to your creativity as well. Pino Palladino, right, was his first gig when he moved to London was with Jools Holland.
Right.
I took over him. Yeah, I took over from him. Now, Pino, I don't know these days, but as far as I know, that Pino is a non-reader.
Yeah.
But man, what a monster player, one of the greatest of all times. And it makes you sort of wonder, had he have been put in that situation where he'd have had to study music academically, would he be as creative and as flamboyant? Has that come from not doing that? And it's just purely listening and improvising all the time from day one, which what took me years to do. It took me years to sort of end up busking and improvising. But he did it from day one. So I think that creativity is going to be stronger within a player like that. But it's difficult, giving advice to younger players because, I didn't go to music college either. So I left school at 16 and turned pro pretty much straight away, But part of me wishes that I could have gone to college. I think I would have quite enjoyed it, But then who knows, had I have gone, maybe I wouldn't have got the gig and things were different. So I can't say to people, do what I did and just play and get out there and whatever, because that's quite reckless. It's very reckless advice. At the same time, if I say to someone, you have got to go to college, you have got to get a degree in music, it's kind of still reckless to say that.
Very reckless, yeah.
Because it might not be right for them. The people have to make their own choices. But for me, in my job, the ability to read and to busk and improvise and use your ears, both have to be very, very strong. And that's the only way that I've had the 40-year career that I've had.
That was Cry Myself to Sleep with Michael McDonald and Candy Dolfer. This is Notes from an Artist on CygnusRadio.com. Let's get back to our conversation with Dave Swift.
But check this out. Jools' band, I think we've talked about this before. There is still only myself and the horn section that read. Jools, I think, probably reads a little, but he's predominantly an ear player. And the guitarists, our drummer, and our organ player all ear players. Mm-hmm. Now, we're all in the same band. We're all playing with the same artists. We're playing the same songs on the same TV shows. And it all works out somehow.
That was Please Can I Talk by the Sugar Babes with the great Dave Swift on bass. This is Notes from an Artist on CygnusRadio.com.
But shouldn't the bass player be the most educated? Because every note has a function within the chord. And let's face it, a guitar player, keyboard player can get away with, gliding over the changes if they don't quite know it. But a bass player, you've got to land on that root. You've got to outline the changes.
Well, yeah, exactly that. And I think especially if you're a guitarist and a keyboard player, especially, I often look when I play with guys, if they take their hands off the instrument just to sort of scratch their ear. And I'm thinking, I wonder what that chord was there. I wonder if that was like a particularly complex chord, It's like, there was like, whereas, as you said, with the bass and drums, there's no stopping. But, that's the reason why, I've got charts here. In fact, this is my handwritten chart for when I play with Paul Simon.
Oh, wristband.
Yeah, there it is. I still use pencil and manuscript.
God bless you.
And it's kind of messy, but having said that, Paul, as we discussed before, Paul kept changing
the meter
around, but I do a lot of these. He is like a Jameson's part, Darling Dear, one of my favorite bass parts, So I'm a real pedant when it comes to the work. And I think it all stems from being a bad student at school. If I could go back in time now, I would be very scholarly at school.
I think a lot of us have that same.
I used to be the kid that sat at the back kind of going, don't ask me, I don't know this. But now, but if I could go back in time, I'd be the kid sitting at the front saying, pick me, because I'd be so much more studious this time round. So I think all of this, it's kind of me, making up for making a mess of my education in high school. I don't want to be the same person I was back then, so I love doing the work and really being quite pedantic about the whole thing. And also, when you play with these artists, the bass line is often more specific than anything else there. And if I'm playing with certain people and I've just listened to it vaguely, the track, and I'm playing an approximation, and Shaka Khan comes up to me and said, "It's very nice, Dave, but it's not what's on the record." Can you play what's on the record? And I'm kind of, I thought this was close enough. Okay, so then you've got to go away. You've got to go off the bandstand and learn that stuff. So for me, do the hard work, do the homework at the very beginning, well in advance. So you come to them, you nail what's on the record, they're happy. And of course, they can turn around and say, you don't have to play what's on there. You can free that up. But at least you've done the work. You've done the homework in the beginning.
You never know who, the artist may want it note for note or just want your own interpretation of it.
Which brings up a quick question. How much in advance do you get material for the show?
Well, if it does differ. So say, for instance, our New Year's Eve TV show, which is called Jools Holland's Hoot Nanny, because we have to play with a lot of people on that. Some years we've had to play with like 10 different artists on the same show, which is a real roast, because you're playing with people you've never played with before, you're playing songs you never played with. So often, you might get the tracks maybe a week in advance on those, and then some other times, if we're just playing with like one person, if I'm playing with one person, you might get it the night before. Sometimes you get it the day. And in years gone by, when we've done some of Jools' radio shows, we haven't even been given the track. We haven't even been, we've been told who the artist was. For instance, we had Amy Winehouse on the radio show once, and we knew she was coming in at just a rhythm section, but we didn't know what track. So we're thinking, oh my God, So she comes on the show and we're all sitting there, hi, how's it, And then all of a sudden, the track gets chosen. They go into the control room and put a CD in there, and it's Jools' rhythm section, and we've got to listen to the track sitting in front of Amy, and we've got to learn it while she was sitting there kind of, filing her nails or something like that. And that you've only got like maybe 2 listens through tops, and you have to be able to play it live.
And was John Altman on that date?
No. Oh, was he? Oh, he might have been. Do you know John? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to call him because I want him on the show.
Yeah, I can't, because that day there was a bunch of people there, but I can't remember I was just kind of, all I could think about was, my God, we've got to learn this song quick.
Gosh, you would think Amy Winehouse would have an arranger that came in at least with lead sheets and things.
You know what?
It's amazing. Yeah.
People often say, do any of the artists come with stuff? And they just don't. The only one I can remember, we played with Andy Williams on Jools' TV show. And
right.
Andy's guy had some charts. But, with all due respect to the other guys in the rhythm section, I was the only one that could actually use it. But no, more often than not, we just get sent a recording and we've got to do our own thing, which in my case is immediate transcription.
Right.
Just so I've got it, and just so I can look at it and study it and make sure, and then if there's time, I will always attempt to learn it by heart if I can.
That was Ray Davies doing Other People's Lives. This is Notes from an Artist on CygnusRadio.com.
Doesn't it frustrate you when you see a jazz band on the bandstand? They've been playing the same music for like months, and they've got that sheet music in front of them. It infuriates me. So you have to know these songs by now, for God's sake.
Yeah, and it's worse when it's like a real book, and you can see it's a real book, and it's one of those cheap music school stands.
Unreal book.
It's not even like a heavy-duty pro stand.
Right, where the real book falls off the stand, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, discussing education, because it's a subject that fascinates me because I experience the college side of it, but I am interested in how people study and learn, especially with jazz, which is probably my favorite genre of music to listen to it and to play. I think what it is, it's the same with transcription books as well, with the real book. It's like, if you look at all the great jazz musicians, they learned from just listening, they learned from their contemporaries, they learned from the recordings. They went straight to the source. And I think what's happened now is because that is kind of quite daunting for a lot of people, and it's time consuming as well. So, wow, you can buy a book that it means you can get through all of those songs with just by turning a page ish, or, if you want to learn a Jacko thing, you can buy a book because someone's done all the work for you, kind of thing.
Right.
But we all know how flawed those things are because, the whole thing with transcriptions and whether you're doing them, whether you're writing them down, because that's the other recent thing that I've been reading a lot about is, I do a lot of written transcriptions, but sometimes there's as much benefit by doing them in your head, by actually not committing them to paper.
Right, you internalize.
Often what people do is, they'll write this stuff down and then either forget about it and just feel really happy with themselves that look what I've done, I've got all these transcriptions, but can you play them?
Exactly.
Are you benefiting from them? Have you assimilated them? So particularly with the whole school of thought with the real books, some people say the real book should be put in the bin. If you want to play those songs and play them well and be an accomplished player, go to the source. Listen to the recordings. Do what all those guys did.
The Ron Carter book, Chartography,
yes,
is one of the most fantastic concepts. Forget the book itself. If you can draw the concept out of it, which is what he does, is he takes autumn leaves. He takes it once per year for the 5 years he was with Maya. He then doesn't do one chorus. He does 4 or 5. Okay. And he puts the harmony. He puts the chords down. When you're doing Autumn Leaves and you go from a C minor bar 1 to a C sharp diminished bar 2, wow, why? Hey, I got to think here. What's that all about? And he does that for the book. So once again, we discussed it with Ron, but when I put the book down, it was like, now what do I have to do? How do I have to rethink? So much of what I've done, it gives your ears a workout. It gives your fingers a workout. It gives your writing a workout if you do decide to transcribe it. It's a brilliant, and who but Ron Carter to come up with it, right?
Right, and you get the cue thing on the phone to actually listen to the recording as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He had the QR code so you can listen to those exact recordings.
Wow. That's very
fabulous.
Cool. But I think what's happened as well with things like the real book and transcriptions generally, because back then, those great jazz musicians, that was their life. It wasn't just like earning a few quid or a pastime or a hobby. Jazz for them was a lifestyle. Whereas I think with a lot of musicians now, it is like a casual thing. It's a bit of a fun thing. So there isn't that kind of environment or perhaps incentive to have that repertoire to learn stuff, so people just think, well, look, I've not got a gig for like another 2 months, like it's just easy to turn up and just put the book on the stand, because it's not that big a deal. And I think that's what's happened. It's kind of laziness as well. But obviously, I know great young jazz musicians that wouldn't dream of using that. And all day they're listening and working stuff out. That's their own choice, But I think a lot of people... But, the transcription book as well, they drive me crazy because most of them are so bad.
Yes.
I mean, I've bought so many of them over the years, and some are better than others. But, man, I always... look at the mistakes in them. I'm thinking, wow, someone's making a lot of money from this. Do you know what I mean? And also what's happening is that people, like I said, it's a shortcut for them because they think, oh, wow, someone's done all the work. And they're even bypassing listening to the tracks. They're just kind of going what's on the page, which is...
But then think about this, Dave and Tom. Think about you've got your real book up there. You're going to do Autumn Leaves, but you're bringing a singer up. You didn't see. You're screwed.
Yeah.
Those dots on the neck don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Get a capo.
That was Terry Walker doing Misfit with the Jools Holland Band on Later with Jools Holland. Dave Swift, our guest on bass. This is Notes from an Artist on CygnusRadio.com.
We talk education. One of the things David and I try to stress also is the history of the instrument is just as important in education. If you were on a session and I said, hey, could you play the chorus like Sir Paul, or could you give me a little Duck Dunn or Jameson on the bridge, you understand what I'm saying. With your students, Dave, do you find that they have a sense of history? I know probably I was going to say the most famous young bass players on the scene that everybody knows now is Joe Dart, maybe Michael League, certainly Esperanza and Tal Winkenfield are, very high profile. But do your students have a sense of where the instrument came from?
Only after I've told them.
Okay. Because the beautiful thing now about YouTube is we can watch Ron Carter. We can watch Anthony Jackson. We can watch European jazz shows and things. It's amazing to see. We can watch Jocko and say, oh, that's how he positions Teen Town. Okay.
Sure. But yeah, that's a good point, because when I started out, the first people that I ended up hearing were Jacko, Stanley Clarke, quickly followed by Marcus Miller. And it's the same with double bass players as well. I was Stanley and it was Ray Brown, but it took me years to go backwards. To think, well, hang on, who influenced those guys? So then you start to read about Monk Montgomery on electric bass. Funnily enough, I've got a gig coming up soon, and somebody wants to create, it's like a big band, and they want to create some era in time, because I think it was Lionel Hampton that encouraged Monk Montgomery to get the electric bass when it came out.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
Lionel was really into it. So this guy is running this big band. He wants me to play acoustic bass, but to bring an electric to play some of those early
Fender J bass you need on that.
Yeah, exactly that. But it took me years, I'm embarrassed to say, to discover who Jameson was, even though I've been hearing him that whole time. Right. It's the same with upright bass. I had to go back. Jimmy Blanton, I had no idea. It took me years. Because when you're kind of young and you hear all the really flash guys, you hear the fusion guys, and they're the ones that drew you to the instrument because of how crazy flamboyant they were, and also the availability of recordings as well. So yeah. But I made sure, and I've got like folders now, and I've got like, jazz bass folders where I transcribed loads of Ray Brown stuff, Jimmy Blanton, Oscar Pettiford. Went right back to the beginning and tried to do the same with electric players as well, with sort of Monk and, Carol Kay, of course, all those guys. So I think the history of it is important. But these days now you've got the Joe Darts and all that kind of thing. So the same thing does happen now that happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Joe Dart fan, then you're going to want to hear Jocko and Rocco Prestia, because that's where he's drawing from.
Oh, sure. Yeah. For me, I wanted to go back. The trouble now is time has moved on. So there's so much more the young guys have got to
think about it. Jocko and Prestia, we're talking 50 years ago. It's not, it wasn't just, those aren't new guys anymore.
Jim Fielder, and you can make a case that he was pre-Jocko, pre-Rocco. If you listen, You Make Me So Very Happy, that cadenza he's doing there, oh, good God. Transcribe that one, why don't you? You know what I mean?
We had a fascinating conversation with Jim. Yeah, exactly. And he applied even the Simondl technique to the Fender bass. And the reason he held it vertically was because he's used as an upright player to looking.
The only two books that I had with upright, it was the Simondl and Ray Brown's bass method. That was it.
Sure.
That's
You
all
didn't
I
have the
had.
Rufus Reed book?
Yeah, I got that a little bit later. Yeah, the Evolving Bassist and then Evolving Upward, I think it was called. Yeah. Recordings for me became everything. That became my main education was the actual recordings, was going to the source, as I like to call it.
All right, David. Yes.
But it's hard work. That's tough because you've got to find the tracks. You need to listen to them. You need to immerse yourself in them, and then if you want to do the transcriptions, and then it's a lot of work. But then if that's your job, and if that's what's going to benefit you as a musician and get you work and make you more employable, then why wouldn't you do it? But,
Absolutely.
Try to watch as much episodes as later as possible. Unfortunately, I think online they don't allow the British broadcasts here. We had it on cable TV here as part of MTV, but I think they've dropped it. But one of the things I'm concerned about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the state of the bass nowadays. I would say that around the year 2000 or so is when Pro Tools became ubiquitous. I mean, when people set up their own home studios. And what happened is, as a result of that, it prompted people to be more multi-instrumentalist, because you no longer had to go to a studio. You have fewer and fewer bass players, that play bass full time. Now, when I think of the great British bass players, you know them all: Herbie Flowers, Bruce Thomas, Andrew Bodner, Kevin Wilkinson, Yolanda Charles, Mark Betters, Mark King, Paul Denman, Gordon Sumner, Guy Pratt, Pino, Norman Watroy. These individual players had such a personality, and if I saw Norman Watroy on the record credit, I'm going to buy that record. I want to hear what he's doing. But I watched Jools Holland, I watched a lot of the young players on the show, and they kind of lack harmonic and rhythmic diversity. I see them and I know that bass isn't their first instrument, just the way they're holding it so timidly. Especially odd when I watch Jools and you have all the great contemporary rhythm and blues artists. And you think about a rhythm and blues and soul music gave birth to, really was the bedrock was the electric bass. And I'm seeing that a lot of them are just like one note root players that are just sort of an adjunct to the guitar. And obviously in metal and fusion, you're gonna have people more dedicated to the bass. Is the instrument in a pop context on the decline? Because I just don't hear it the way I used to hear it.
Sure. I do agree with you, but then I suppose the music itself, I mean, do you not think that dictates some of it as well? Because if you listen to all those great players that you mentioned, a lot of the time the music and the tracks they were playing on were very inventive and kind of...
Well, they took their form from classical and jazz format, AABA and even, let's say, 12-bar blues. But now with hip-hop and electronic music becoming more prevalent, song form has changed. A lot of songs don't have a bridge.
Sure.
That I don't hear. They don't have an intro. They don't have a coda. They don't have a modulation. It's a verse might be just a 4-bar phrase, and then the chorus is like maybe a 2-bar phrase.
Yeah, but it does make you wonder whether or not the bass players don't have the capability, or are they just thinking to themselves, "My God, if I do anything too flamboyant in these songs, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb." I'm always amazed that Jameson was able to do what he did. You listen to those parts. I played for once in my life on Jools' TV show with Corin Bailey Ray.
Right, yes. Great episode.
Joy playing it in the original key was glorious. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a tour de force. This is like a solo. But if you listen to it, it doesn't ever sound conspicuous or wrong or ruin the song. I mean, that's but I think because the song was very rich in itself, the sort of harmonies and all the things going on. But I think in modern day pop stuff, it's probably more difficult to be more flamboyant in it because you're probably going to stick out too much. So I wonder if they're worried about being conspicuous as well. But
I just not so much flamboyance, but when I watch a lot of the young bands on Jools, I'm like, well, your guitar player is playing a bar chord in the root position. Why the hell are you playing a root? I want to grab that thing in my corner and go on, burst into your studio and say, hey, let's hear some rhythmic diversity. Let's hear a little bit of, like I said, when I listen to, a Carl Radel or somebody, and I know I'm going back, but even guys like Guy Pratt, who came up with beautiful, beautiful lines.
Sure.
I don't hear those hooks anymore. I don't hear that coming from the bass. It seems like the bass has kind of been, pushed off in that sense.
But on the other side of that, how do you then, because obviously those guys they're gigging, you know,
Yeah, no, they are.
they're touring, all that kind of stuff. And then you get all the other people, the bedroom guys, who are wonderful, phenomenal players, you know, some a little over the top, you know, but these guys are in their bedrooms and not really out there performing, you know, and it just makes you kind of think, I'm not sure, you know, I'm torn between that. I totally get what you're saying, and I do agree, but I suppose they are you know, those are the people on Jools' show. They're still out there touring, playing stuff. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we all want to be doing. You know, we want to be out there as opposed to being in our bedroom, playing something sort of complex and flashy kind of thing, you know, so.
And I do notice a lot of the acts on Jools don't have bass players, you know, and I'm like,
what's going on there? The other thing is with bass players as well. I remember when I started out, so do you remember my trombone teacher saying to me, you know, play upright bass guitar, you'll work forever. And he was right, because when I came to London, there was a small group of guys just playing bass guitar, small group playing upright, and an even smaller group that were like myself, were doublers.
Right, double, yeah.
So when I moved to London, man, it was so easy to get work, because there were so few people that could play both, you know. So that was fantastic. Definitely was a big asset. But like now, and even with me playing the trombone as well, I'd be underqualified, because like now bass players that, you know, they play upright, well, when I say play upright, you know, they own an upright, you know, but let's just go with play. They play an upright bass guitar, every variation of the bass guitar, keyboard bass, they do BVs, they're usually the MD of the band, you know, and I'm looking at these kind of guys, I'm thinking, man, I'm underqualified and old, you know. It's like, you know, I thought I was the head of the game back then, but now it's like, I play upright, and doesn't everybody? When I thought, well, a lot of people might do, but how good are they on all those instruments? You know, I guess it's more in the pop world, isn't it? But certainly with the keyboard thing, and that seems to be a lot of the younger players that I know in pop bands. You know, having the keyboard skills is a massive thing. They're having to play a lot.
But, you know, it's not just having the keyboard skill. It's having the keyboard skill and being able to accommodate this sound or that sound or create your own sound. You know, it's keyboard and oscillator. That's even gone. I remember I was in a band on Mercury, and I had an ARP mono synth thing. There wasn't very much you could do. There were certain sounds, and that was that. Now I've got, I don't have Pro Tools, I've got Logic. And I've got more plugins than you could possibly imagine. I don't know how to use them. They're there.
I've not embraced technology well at all. You know, I mean, I don't have a home studio or anything like that. Here at home, I've got a laptop and an iPhone, and that's it. Because I am 57 now, you know, I'm kind of, you know, getting on a bit. And all of my work has always been in professional studios. That's where I've never needed to have anything at home. But now I'm starting to wonder, maybe I should, because I'm getting asked to do remote recording. And I say...
That's another fact of life. Yeah.
But I'm not looking forward to it, because I'm not great with technology. My wife, who's a lot younger than I am, she does all that kind of stuff. She understands technology better than I. But, you know, maybe it's something that I'm going to have to embrace, but I still like the idea of going into a commercial studio, which is what I've done for the last 40 years, you know, and that's...
have to get Oscar to be your engineer.
Exactly that.
I think COVID has changed the game. It's made remote recording so much more important to do and to know about.
Yeah, sure. And also, you know, I'm still waiting for the holographic technology, so we can all be in our homes, but actually playing our instruments, and they can just project it on a stage hundreds of miles away, so we don't have to leave the house. Because you know, touring, you know, I've been touring with Jools for 30 years.
Yes, yeah.
You know, like non-stop, 2 big tours a year, summer, and you know, I'm not complaining about it, because it's been an amazing experience, and you travel, you get to see the world, whatever. But you know, you hit a certain age, and it gets grueling, it gets tough after a while. And a couple of years ago, I had some health issues, and I was really struggling to be on the road. And I almost said to Jools, I'm not sure if I can finish this tour. You know, I was feeling really, really quite poorly, you know, but I did it in the end. But the touring thing it's tough.
Well, it's going to be tougher with COVID, because I mean, here in the United States, every state has their own rules. Of course, in Europe, you go from country to country. There's going to be different parameters that you're going to you got to deal with that. That's on top of what a hassle is to travel anyway.
Well, luckily with Jools, most of our work is in the UK.
Yeah, of course.
Because of his TV and his radio shows, that's where he's most known. So it's going to be more problematic if we were a band that predominantly plays around Europe.
Yeah, sure.
Which we very rarely go out there now because everything's here. But yeah, we still don't know what's happening with that. Right now, we should be out on touring all over the UK, and then the next tour would normally start the end of October and go till Christmas.
Right.
We don't even know if that's going to happen. We know a handful of gigs are going to happen, but the actual main body of the tour.
When is the show going to start taping?
What, the TV show?
Yeah.
It's been happening.
Okay.
But what they've done is, what they've had to do. So Jools' private studio is 5-minute drive from where I live. And that's where, we would normally do all our rehearsals, album recordings, and radio shows from there. But the TV stuff was always done at the BBC studios.
Right.
But obviously we did the New Year's Eve show, Jools' Hootenanny. We did the one just gone because the BBC said that has to happen. We can't. It's been going for almost 30 years. The nation needs a boost. We need you guys on TV, albeit a little more plump than we were the previous year. What's the old joke? Like I hear the camera adds 20 pounds. It's like, how many cameras were on him? Yeah, I knew I should have worn a cummerbund. I knew I should have worn one. Or I should have had my Ibanez bass a little bit lower.
Yeah, this is where the coffee table bass comes into play for us senior musicians.
Should have lowered the strap. But yeah, so that was done at the TV studio. We all had to travel separately because normally we carpool when we go to the TV.
Sure.
We travel separately. Social distance once we're there. And then normally we have like an audience in the TV studio, but then we have a celebrity that sit down and Jools goes to chat with.
Right.
As well as the artist that we're playing with. And it was just decided it was just too risky having all those people. So in the end, they just said, okay, and not even other bands on. Normally we're the featured house band. There's other bands on and they sort of said, no, none of that. You guys are the only band we're having. And so, so it was us, the artists we were playing for, and the camera crew. And that was it. In this big, cavernous, empty room that's normally going crazy with the audience. And it was odd because we're playing with Tom Jones and Michael Kiwanuka and Celeste and Rick Wakeman. We're playing with all these kind of great guys. And at the end of each song, we'd stop and you'd just hear from one camera guy, and maybe someone making the tea. Just hear this little bit, and so that was kind of weird, but it's the only way they could have done it, So that was a one-off. But when his regular TV show later with Jools Holland, they couldn't. It was just too much hassle to do the same thing. I was going to say that what they did, because we were the only band on there, we couldn't play the whole night because it would have killed us, So what they did is we played what we would normally do, and they put stock footage from previous episodes.
Oh, right. Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
So that gave us a break, so what's been happening on Jools' regular TV show? He said to the BBC, well, look, we can't have loads of crew. We can't have loads of musicians. Why don't we do it at my studio? Which is quite snug. So on the current, and it's on TV right now, it's just Jools. There's a piano. There's the guest, one person. There might be the producer there and maybe one camera. And that's it. That's the show. And it's just Jools chatting with them over the piano. And they'll play, and Jools will get them to choose songs that have been on the series that they want to hear. So there's no live thing. And we're not involved. We're all sitting at home. It's all because of COVID restrictions.
I spoke with Richard Thompson last week, and he says things are opening up.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, because my wife Lucy, she's a professional jazz singer, so we've already done 2 gigs together the last couple of Sundays here in London.
Ronnie Scott?
No, it's at a place called Boysdale. There's 4 of them in London. They're live. They're like bar restaurants, but they're live music venues as well. Okay. So they're called Boysdale. There's one in Canary Wharf, which is actually very close for us. So, we've been doing that as a quintet. So myself on upright, Lucy singing, piano, drums, and sax. But and that's just kind of playing standards and stuff. So we've started to do that. And I think it's sometime this month. I think it's in a few weeks. And they reckon that's it. It's masks off and we're back to it. Trouble with the thing with the Jools thing is because the nature of the gigs that we do, they're very large venues. So London venues, we do Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah, right.
We do 2 nights there. So huge venues with a lot of people, and I don't know if people are going to be rushing out, be with crowds. So the gigs that Lucy and I are doing, I mean, there's still probably like 100 people in these venues, but everything's quite spread out, and it's still people probably still feel quite safe. But someone like the Royal Albert Hall is very dense.
Yeah, you can't.
I wonder what's going to happen. I don't know. It's a bit of it's tricky, isn't it? To have the one type of job that requires large gatherings of people.
When does Later traditionally shoot? What time of year do you guys usually?
So no, it's like a couple of times a year. Like I said, it's actually on now. It's
but I'm just saying, without COVID, did you have what 2 seasons a year? Is that how it worked?
I think it's at least 2.
Okay.
It's at least 2 seasons, yeah. But it's the thing is, it's weird watching it now. Well, first of all, not being involved, it's very, very weird. But and the format is literally he just has to chat with them. Sometimes a guest will come on and they might have an acoustic guitar and they'll do something. Right. Mostly it's chatting. But I think the key thing is that Jools, he's keeping his name going. The Jools Holland TV show is still there. He's still on TV, which is good for us in his band, even though we're not involved with it because we can't. But it's better than the BBC saying, listen, let's just can the whole thing until... so it's great for him that he's actually got that private studio that he can say to the BBC, listen, come to my place. This is
keep the gig alive,
so that's really important for us, but it's to have been doing that touring and all that TV stuff, having that kind of conveyor belt of artists that you've got to play for, and it just all sort of stops, so it's a tough time, but I think it's important, to keep motivated, because it's really easy to kind of lose heart with what's going on, and that's the reason why it's been great for me, actually, because I've been able to put a lot more time on the trombone that I don't normally get to do. The trombone often sort of...
And you get to spend more time with Oscar. I see on Facebook every morning what you guys are up to.
Oh, he's fine on his own. He doesn't need me. And I mean, that is great too, But and like for me taking up the guitar, it's been great, because the idea there is, Lucy and I did some duo videos. I don't know if you saw any of them. We just did me on upright, and people thought they were great, But the thing is, you can't do like a whole gig, a whole evening with just voice and double bass. Once you've done Fever and maybe Moondance, the novelty is going to wear off. Piano thing is just too much work. It's just too much work for me. But the guitar, tuned in fourths, it's coming together. It's really coming together. And I said to her, maybe we can go out and do some gigs, together like that, because at least then we've got a chordal instrument. Can you imagine going out and say, we've got this husband and wife duo. She's a singer and I play the trombone.
I'd see that. Yeah. 2 things I want to wrap up with. First of all, you have an amazing collection of instruments. Where do you keep them? Various places. I mean, so some, a lot of them are here at home. Some of them was a studio, but But it was a lot easier when I was, because I've only been with Lucy like 5 years. When I was a bachelor, it was a lot easier because you could leave them in the bathroom, in the kitchen. Yes, exactly. My wife is nodding her head. Yes.
So I've had to be. They're under the bed. They're in cupboards, and we've got a basement as well. And luckily, for years I wouldn't put anything in the basement because I was terrified of doing it. But
it floods.
I've lived here long enough to realise it's actually really good down there. The temperature, it's dry and stuff like that. So it's some of them live down there now. But a lot of them I just never get to play because they weren't all bought to play. They were bought because they were kind of rare, unusual. Yeah. A little quirky. They were part of the history of the instrument, the evolution of the instrument.
Right. Yeah, I noticed you have those Fender, those active ones. Remember those, David, that came out in 1980?
Active?
What's active? Fender Pete. Well, go on Dave Swift's Facebook page, and he has 5 in every color, I think.
It was the first time that Fender did an active bass guitar with an active onboard preamp.
Yeah.
So they came out in 1980 called the Fender Precision Specials, and they did them in some really cool colors. They did candy apple red, they did a white one, and an all walnut, which is walnut neck fingerboard, the lot. And I've got every variation, apart from the candy apple red with a rosewood board. It's the rarest of them all, but I've got all the others. And do you know what? They sound amazing, but
heavy instruments, yes, aren't they heavy?
Oh yeah, they're notoriously heavy. They weigh, they're like a black hole, they're soup. So you couldn't play them standing. You'd be in pain with those, but they do sound. With the preamp engaged, they sound incredible. And I've got those Roland, the synthesizers, the early Roland bass. Yeah. So I've got the ones that look, more traditional, the very early ones, and then I've got the other ones with a handle.
It looks like a bow.
Yeah.
Bow and arrow thing.
Some people refer to them, Doctor Who and the Daleks. They call them the Daleks handbag. It's like a handbag for a guy. So I've got every variation of those, including a rare fretless one. I've got the floor units for them. In fact, Roland keeps saying to me, they keep saying, we should have them on display somewhere, or we should do a photo shoot with them, because I've got the whole set of these. There was a white, a black, and a red one. So Moog
Taurus pedals?
No, I don't have those, actually. There's no room. I couldn't squeeze another thing in here, She would kill me.
Wait until Oscar gets a little older, Dave, because this is really a nice sized room,
Look at that.
But when they turn 16, it's no longer your room. So Saturday night, they're going to have a party here. 13 kids.
Hide everything.
They move everything. So just wait.
I have these things, Dave, but one of the things I want to wrap up with is, we spoke to Ron Carter, as we mentioned, and, for 50 years, people have been asking him, what did you learn from Miles? And he says, well, let me tell you what Miles learned from me. And we asked the same thing of Denny, because obviously, even though he's played with so many major artists, everybody wants to know about Wings. And Denny Sywell, the drummer. And, again, what did you learn from Paul? And he says, well, let me tell you how I influenced Paul. When Dave Swift is on the gig, what are the band leaders learn from you? What are the people, the artists? There has to be some reciprocal synergy there. They got to get some. Why do they call you? I know obviously you're proficient and you can do the job, but what do you add to the?
I think my tenacity is the great appeal, and also because anyone that hires me knows that I will always go the extra mile, whether it's learning the material, getting to rehearsals early. It's that preparation. They just know that they won't lose a minute of sleep, because whatever they send me that needs maybe working out, changing, whatever, that's important to me. That's a great thing. But just also, I'm quite diplomatic as well. The one thing that I got from the Jools gig is, you have to be a lot more than a musician. You have to be a babysitter, a social worker, a diplomat, because some of those people that come and play with us, they're in the alien environments. We're in our element on that TV show.
Right.
And you'd be amazed at the artists that come in, really, really famous, who are a little bit nervous, uncertain. And I've been asked, can you spend some time with them, just chat with them, make them feel better, make them feel comfortable.
Sure, wow.
That kind of stuff. And I'm just thinking, wow, this is so weird, because I'm just a working bass player, and these people are superstars.
Yeah, but you're on television every night, and that's intimidating.
Well, yeah, I guess so, and the time we played with Smokey Robinson, and we hadn't got a guitarist, and Jools got Eric Clapton, you remember, and then we got told that we can't rehearse with Smokey because his planes come in late, and Eric's kind of he couldn't believe it, and I said, welcome to my world,
wow.
We're used to this kind of, sometimes this stuff happens, where I guess for him, when he's in his own band, everything's much more organized, but now he's in our environment.
He's the guy who reads a chart and does the prep that way, if you know what I mean. Here you are thrust into a situation where all of your floors will be uncovered nationally.
Oh yeah, it's a roast. It's a real roast of the gig. But so yeah, for that reason, you can't take any chances. So yeah, for me, I think I get looked, because people know that. I will always go overboard in preparation, and so they haven't got anything to worry about, because again, it all stems back from being the kid at school, the one that didn't do that didn't do their homework, really and figuratively, so I'm not going to get caught out again, no way.
It's a good thing. It's like everything else. It's always a good thing.
The nature of a lot of stuff, what we do with Jools, it is kind of old school, kind of R&B sort of blues stuff. And occasionally we'll play a funk thing, or we'll play something that's a bit more hip like that, where I get to stretch out.
Preparation on reading, going the extra mile. That's so important for our listeners, for aspiring bass players. And I'll tell you something, for some of the bass players who have been doing a lot of work, it either convinces them that they were on the right path, or maybe, hey, maybe I should look a little bit this way. So it's all important. It really is.
Yeah. And you know what? It's kind of, it might sound like, this sort of the thing where the kid comes to school with a shiny apple for the teacher, kind of, it might sound a little bit like that, but it really isn't. It's about being as professional as you can, because if this is your job, if it's your livelihood and it's your legacy, I never want to be the guy that's caught out. I never want to be the person that hasn't done the work. I want to be now the guy that sits back and relaxes while anybody else who hasn't done it is kind of going, oh, with all due respect, I don't want to be that person. And also, when I look at the level of work I put into it, there's probably people that have done way more than I have. For me, I mean, I work really hard with all of this preparation stuff, but there's probably people that make me look like a slacker still. You know what I mean? Those virtuoso fusion guys, who do all that kind of stuff. That must do better from my point of view. But for me, this is what I need to do for my job. Sometimes I'll go crazy. And I once transcribed all of Jacko's solo to Donna Lee. I did the head of the solo. It's like 7 pages long, It took me 6 months. I mean, obviously not non-stop. I was doing other things in between that. And then at the end of it, I thought to myself, this is kind of great. It was good for my ears, but I haven't got the time to learn to play this now, because it's like, so for me, it made a lot more sense to do, stuff like, Jameson's, which are still a challenge.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But at least they're usable in a practical way. So by spending time on that kind of stuff, I can actually use those in my own playing stuff. Whereas I can't imagine like doing a gig with my wife, and in the middle of a nice ballad, I start to play a section from Jacko's Donna Lee, and I think my own wife might even fire me, So,
well, I'm thinking of it. You have the Charlie Parker Omnibook, correct?
Sure.
Go read Chi-Chi and play it on your 6-string bass. It's all in first position. I did an article for Bass Musician Magazine on it, but it lays beautifully on the 6-string bass.
Oh, nice. Funnily enough, I was playing guitar today. I was playing Blues for Alice.
Okay.
On guitar with it, so I'll have a look at that one. I think it's important to study stuff that you're gonna use. It's gonna be applicable. Again, sometimes I might hear like a nice Marcus thing, and I'm thinking that's beautiful. I love his playing, but there's not really much point in me doing that, because I can't imagine I'm going to be able to use it anywhere. It's not that practical to me, whereas a lot of the other stuff, say James or whatever, it's important to be realistic about it as well.
Dave, thanks for talking.
My
Great
pleasure.
to see you again. We hope to get to the UK. Hopefully I'll get there next year. We don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I hope so. Well, do give me a call, and I'm very flattered that people ask me to do them, but I always kind of think that, as long as there's some benefit that people get, as long as there's some little nugget of knowledge or whatever, I hate to think I'm sort of boring people.
That's our job.
Does Jools play with his thumb, and that kind of stuff?
Well, sometimes, all you can really talk about is what is your own experience. You can just, and that's the most honest thing you can do.
2 things, though. Ron Carter said this: when I get off the road, I spend an hour learning to practice the A scale till I get it right. That's one thing. And 2, it's important to be with some adults. And that's what we hope to be. Adults in the room being able to ask pertinent questions that aren't, fanboy crap.
Yeah, exactly. And just really finally, one of my favorite quotes, and you guys have probably heard it, and I'm still not quite sure it's attributed to, but people often say to me, how do you get where you are? How do we get to do what you do, and all this kind of stuff? And I just like that saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Good words.
Or someone said, I think the harder you practice, but I heard it, the harder you work. And I think that's a lot of truism there, because if nothing comes from nothing, you've got to be doing stuff. You've got to be proactive more so than ever now with the competition that's there in this industry. There's so many more people who want to be musicians. When I was a kid, our music department and our drama department were empty. There were tumbleweeds rolling by. No one wanted to play an instrument. No one wanted to sing. Yeah. But now, that's what everybody wants to be on the stage. I always say there's going to be no audience left.
I agree.
Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I said to them, look, I've been doing this for 40 years. This is, And 10 years before I got the Jools gig, 10 years of being a pro player, just doing what everyone else has done, you know. So yeah, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I kind of like that.
There we go, Philosopher Dave. All right, gentlemen. Have a good one, Dave. See you in 2022, hopefully. And we'll keep you, you'll get us on Facebook and we'll send you all the links and everything.
Okay, brilliant. It's lovely to see you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Great stuff.
That's our show for tonight, folks. We are being brought to you by Modacity. Maximize your musical potential with Modacity. Practice is incredibly important for success, but it's not simply about how much time you practice, it's about how you practice. Modacity is the app that can help you put it all together. Tom and I both use this when we practice and with our students. Get organized, get focused, get Modacity. You can download the app on iTunes. We are also being brought to you by Pedal Train. If you're like me, you have lots of pedals. The only way to cart them around is with a Pedal Train case. You can get them in many different sizes with both hard cases and soft cases. Pedal Train is the best way to bring your sound along. You can go to www.pedaltrain.com for more info. I want to thank my co-host Tom Semioli and, of course, Dave Swift, a special person that I have gotten to know over the past few weeks. I want to let you know that we have begun to archive our previous shows via our podcast, also titled Notes from an Artist. You can find all of them with any of the major podcast players or at our podcast website, notesfromanartist.buzzsprout.com. Next week, we will be on the air with our special guest, Snarky Puppy founder, Michael Lee. So tune in every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for the next edition of Notes from an Artist on cygnusradio.com. Have a great week. Take care.